everybody, this is Sarah Whitaker.
And Salty Dalty.
We're here for Working the World, episode 16. Today we're going to be talking about promoters. And basically what made them great, what evolved their practices, especially from the territory days to the monopoly, and history of what they do now.
Absolutely. So, how's your week been?
My week, we've gone through the string of bad luck already.
If we didn't have bad luck, we'd have no luck at all.
We didn't mention it on the last show, but we got our car smashed into by our neighbor. I got influenza. Your mother got double pneumonia.
Yeah.
You got we talked about the knee last time, so
and that is coming along now. It's just a matter of trying to build stability on it because, with what I had, I have to force it to heal as opposed to let it heal because you need to, in my opinion, outside my scope of practice as a personal trainer, you need to force an injury to heal and expose it to stress. Otherwise, you won't get satellite signals to the injury area and, create the recovery process as much. It'll take like 3 times longer from what I've been told. So, but it is coming along. I'm able to get full range of motion on it. I'm able to put weight on it. I'm back lifting. I did box squats today with 2 plates on the bar with knee wrap on there. Did a couple of sumo pulls, some calf raises, just enough to kind of stress that knee area. So, but it's coming along. I'll get back in the ring soon.
Sweet. Well, you'll be able to find us on your favorite podcast platforms as well as YouTube for Working the World 0240.
Mm-hmm.
So, our jargon of the day when it comes to promoters is draw.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us what that means?
Well, we're not referring to like a time limit draw or anything like that, but draw basically means to be able to bring in money and make a profit. So it's like, have you ever heard the term, like, he never drew a dime? Well, once I actually did draw a dime, and I drew it perfectly round. I was sure to get FDR's head on there, and that was the only time I've been able to draw a dime. But all kidding aside, by the way, that I was throwing a little bit of shade on a certain promoter's kid that would go and accuse major stars of not being able to draw a dime. I saw that comment on YouTube, but I digress. But the ability to be able to take in money at the box office because there's somebody or a certain group of people or the whole card combined, people want to pay to see it. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm. So basically, your star power and what you draw. For money-wise and fan base and merch and... do they put merch into draw?
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Because, if you want to take into account, there's multiple different ways to draw in wrestling. It can be at the box office, it could be off merchandise, it could be off TV revenue, it could be off of, outside advertisements, wrestlers getting, feature in there, John Cena's been doing a lot of commercials lately for, Honda and, Hefty. He's done Sky Vodka in the past. So it's being able to see him, it's like, hey, I know that guy. That's John Cena from WWE. Then they go back and see WWE on TV. It's like, oh, maybe see John Cena's on today, the guy I've seen in the commercials. So that's one way of being able to draw up being in movies. It's being able to get your name out there, get people to pay to see you, and bring that back to pro wrestling.
Sweet. So I know the promoter, in the general sense, takes care of all the business side of...
Yeah. That was pretty much your mother's job when we had LWE.
Right. Takes care of the books, takes care of the payments, takes care of... sometimes they book, but not always.
Well, I was going to say, usually how it works is that bookers become promoters before promoters become bookers. For example, ECW. Paul Heyman was brought in after his tenure at WCW to be an on-air talent as Paulie dangerously managing people. Then not soon after that, they actually brought him in, gave him the book, had him do most of the booking. But Todd Gordon was the promoter. He was the one that handled the money and all that. And then eventually Paulie bought into the promotion and assumed control, I believe majority control, if not sole control of the company, and, became a promoter after being a booker, and he was still doing the book at that time. But he'd have people like Tommy Dreamer, Bubba Ray Dudley, and all that go and do that. And plus, he'd also go and have them promote certain towns, point where they go out there and do the talking for him, bring ECW in there, and they get their cut. So it's kind of weird how it sometimes works, but, because technically I've been a promoter along with you as well as your mother, but she was the main, figurehead.
She was the one that had the license.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
the license and the bond.
License and the bond. So, I mean, you always have to, as much as we don't like the interference of sports commissions in this industry.
Especially across the river because we're in Omaha right now. Because the Iowa Athletic Commission, they can be really stingy. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Can't say something nice about somebody, don't say it at all. So I'm going to plead the fifth on that.
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yeah, you ever watched the movie, what was that movie called with John Turturro? Sugar Time.
No, I haven't.
It's based off Sam Giancana and the Chicago mob and his involvement with the Kennedys and all that. It was a made-for-TV movie. And the opening of the movie is that he's on Capitol Hill being questioned by Bobby Kennedy Sr., which, actually did happen in real life after he helped allegedly get JFK in office. But he was questioning him on everything, and every single answer out of Sam Giancana's mouth was, I declined to answer because I honestly believe my answer might be intended to incriminate me. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's like, we had paperwork that we needed to do. I mean, It's like we had to file for LLC.
Yes.
And we, Mom took care of most of the paperwork, God rest her soul, but...
The legal stuff, the money, yeah, mostly. And you handled most of the media, I handled the book.
Right.
So, but we kind of went back and forth a little bit on the book. Like, you'd recommend things, I'd put it down, and then you do the media. I recommend this, maybe sit down. It's like, hey, maybe like this, maybe not like that. So it's kind of like a balance of power in that regard.
Alrighty, so let's go into, the history of the promoter, and it's the territory days, who would run it during the carnival days? Would that still be a promoter?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it could be subjective, you could be the person who was running the carnival could be called a promoter, or maybe, because, depending on how it was run, maybe an outside vendor would come in and do the wrestling to be able to draw money. So technically, the guy who was the vendor could be called a promoter. It just kind of depended on how it went. But, I mean, technically, the carnival era was going until the 60s, even when the territory era was happening. So I've heard some stories about Harley Race working for Gus Karras in St. Joe, Missouri, traveling the carnival circuit around there, going and wrestling 300-pound farm men as a teenager and beating them.
Sweet. So, I mean, let's go to the times when people were starting to legitimize it as a entertainment venue.
Yeah, well, because they were actually trying to legitimize it more as a sports venue first.
Oh, right.
Because the territory days, everything was kayfabe, and every promoter, everybody had their own, territory. It was kind of like, unspoken word. You don't go and cross these territory lines and all that. And every promotion would have their own world champion, and pretty soon these guys started stepping on each other's toes till finally in 1947 in Waterloo, Iowa, all these promoters got together for the most part, and it's like, okay, we're going to create our own national, I don't want to call it a... It was kind of like all the mob families coming together, recognizing, okay, we're the official mafia right now. These families are. You don't go and do crap with these families, otherwise you're going to pay the penalty. And that was kind of how the NWA was, because it was still being promoted as a legitimate sport as opposed to entertainment in those days. And for example, like Eddie Graham had Florida. I mean, much later on, but Sam Mushnick had St. Louis territory. Bulldog Bob Brown, Harley Race later on ran Kansas City, but WWF wasn't technically a part of that because of, I believe, tax reasons and all that, and plus he wanted to have his own world champion up in the Northeast, Vince McMahon Sr., and down in the our part of the country in the Midwest, for the most part, like the center states, like Nebraska, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Winnipeg, all that. Vern had AWA. So, but they were unofficially members of the NWA, but officially they weren't licensed that for, I believe, tax reasons and commission reasons. But all these promoters got together and kind of forged their own styles on each of their companies based on the culture of the country, part of the country they were at.
So who were some of the big movers and shakers in this time period?
Well, are we talking NWA or in general?
And let's start with NWA because that's the topic.
Yeah, because that was mostly in the South, NWA was. I mean, well, the number one territory everybody wanted to go and work after a while was Carolina's Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, or Jim Crockett Promotions. Let's see. Georgia Championship Wrestling was a pretty prestigious territory at the time when Jim Barnett got control of it. Let's see, Portland, Oregon was a good territory up in Portland, Oregon, run by Don Owens. The LaBelles were hot in LA, but they were unfortunately the first NWA territory to die because of financial reasons. Houston was a hot town, but it was its own little territory because Fritz von Erich mostly ran north into eastern Texas. The Funks ran mostly western Texas. Mid-South obviously became a hot territory after a while after Bill Watts bought it from Leroy McGurk, and it was Oklahoma, Mississippi, Louisiana, that area. But everybody said the easiest territory to go and work was Continental, and not a lot of people talk about that because it was kind of a out-of-the-way territory. It was Pensacola, Mobile, around that area. People loved going and working that territory because it was a territory where you got to be able to make a lot of money, have a really easy life. You worked every day, but you only worked within a small radius of the town, so the trips were easier. And plus, it was run by Ron Fuller, Colonel Rob Parker's brother, or Tennessee Lee. You might remember him from WWF. His brother ran that company, and he also bought into Knoxville, Tennessee, and ran that and got that back up and going. And then they actually had a promotional war with 5 of his guys. And I don't know if you heard about the Plan B video.
Oh, yes.
Where you have Bob Roop, Ron Wright, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., Ronnie Garvin, and one other guy, I can't remember, Boris Malenko. They all tried to go and take territory in Knoxville, and then territory actually somewhat died after that until Jim Barnett actually went and paid them off, got them out of town, bought territory for himself along with Ron, and they started drawing again. So, but yeah, because they actually went and, for people who don't know, there were a bunch of what was known as outlaw companies in the territory days that would run opposition to these main territories, trying to bleed off their business. Like Memphis had one in West Memphis, Arkansas, across the river from Tennessee. So that was kind of, you had to protect your business. But something all these promoters had in common is that they either knew who was going to be able to draw money, and they would have their bookers keep their eyes out for talent to bring in to work with them so they didn't get stale, and knew how to manipulate emotions and all that, because part of the reason promoters are successful is because they have intelligent bookers, and a lot of times they would rotate bookers around so they had different feels coming throughout the year and territory. They used to do that a lot in Memphis too, so, but I digress.
Alrighty, so for those of you who don't understand professional wrestling history, eventually Vince Jr. would come around and monopolize the territory with WWF at the time.
Yes.
And how did that affect promoters from the NWA and
Killed them off.
killed them off?
Kill him off, because the way Vince was, he was very ruthless with his business tactics, because he knew his production value was head above what these local, promotions were, or regional promotions were, because a lot of times with TV, he would always go and have a full house and have people like full arenas, well lit, look very prime time, very upscale. A lot of these promotions used to do in very, very small TV studios, where they would actually have to paint faces on the background of the curtain to make it look like there were more people in there than there were. It's like, and like you have guys looking like Hulk Hogan and, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, guys who had, really, good looks, good physiques and all that, as opposed to a guy like, not to bury anybody, but like what would be a good example? Like a Tommy Rich, who, even though he was a good-looking guy, he didn't have that body, and he kind of spoke with that country accent, like, "Hey, baby, somebody talk about getting fired up." It's like, I mean, I know Tommy was big in the territory era near the end of it with Georgia and, Memphis and all that. But it's like, as far as Vince McMahon's standards, like, he wasn't really kind of on his radar as far as what he was looking for. Or Dusty Rhodes with his robust physique. So Vince wanted the guys who looked like they were like movie stars at the time. I think that'd be the best way to describe that. And also, he would go into like, "Hey, I could put on a better show than you. I'll pay you to be able to go and do that." And Vince knew how to, especially with Hogan with the Rocky movie. After he got fired after doing that, went to AWA, got over, learned his gimmick, and then it's like, "Hey, come on back. I'll pay you more money than Vern, and we'll go ahead and take over the world together." But because Vince knew propaganda, that was his number one thing. Propaganda. Hulk Hogan was the golden goose because of how he looked, and he was already known to the casual eye as somebody who was a celebrity already. So it's oftentimes your talent too. It's like knowing which talent to put on top, which to put underneath, because not everybody can be on top, and some guys are actually better underneath, getting guys over.
So, what other aspects of Vince was he known for when he was as a promoter? I mean, other than his ruthlessness.
Well, he had a good booker, or good bookers, I should say. He was able to bring in George Scott from the Carolinas, who, Dusty took over the booking Carolinas after George Scott, and George was looking for a job. He actually bought Georgia from Jim Barnett and the Briscoes and gave Jim Barnett a job on the booking team. He also, of course, had Pat Patterson, who's a wrestling savant and just knew the business inside out and was extremely creative and came up with a lot of those angles at the time. So he had people that knew the business, or the wrestling side of it, and he handled more with going out there and doing business deals. But he's like, "Oh, promote Hogan, or promote Warrior later on." So it was one of those deals where it's like Vince, his whole deal wasn't wrestling, it was more presentation business, because he understood the business aspect of it more than the booking side, even though he would stick his finger in it occasionally, or later on would do it more.
Well, I know he also acted as commentator. So.
Right, and that's how he started out, because his dad hired him to do that, because his dad had a disagreement with an announcer over his salary. It's like, "Oh, I got my son here. Go announce." So that's how he got his foot in there. Is like he started getting a little bit more involved because his dad showed him more of the business side of it rather than the booking. But he did have his book, and I think Vince would occasionally go through that time to time, or maybe suggest somebody, or because he'd have to ask Vince directly or somebody very close to him how that exactly went. But I know he learned the business side of it from his father.
So, how did the independent circuit really work after the fall of the NWA?
NWA.
Yeah.
Well, uh, it was very much similar to the outlaw territory system, except for you didn't have the NWA to contend with as far as like official promotions. It's kind of like, for example, like there's only like one promotion NWA right now. It's not a group of promoters. It's just one promotion, assuming the name. Well, because back in the territory days, every 2 years or so, they would have an election among the NWA officials to determine who's going to be the president of the NWA for the next 2 years. Kind of like cycling around like a treasurer in like a senior community. That's the best way I can describe that. Because for a while, Barnett, then Jimmy Crockett, no, not Ole. Well, because Ole worked for Jim Barnett. Sam Mushnick was president for a while, but all these promoters would take turns being president of the NWA and would have to vote on who's going to be champion, all that. NWA just became one company after that, after the territory system kind of fell and Jim Crockett got bought out by Ted Turner. That became WCW, and it kind of became, like I said, one company. But you could actually go and have a promotion out right now and go and reach out to the NWA. It's like, hey, can I go ahead and have Trevor Murdoch as when he was champion, or as Rob Conway, or Tim, what's his name, who was champion for a while? But anyway, or Jack Stain, who was champion for a while. It's like, hey, can I get him for this date here to go and rub my town? You don't have to be an official member of the NWA. You can just go ahead and do that. Or Nick Aldis when he was champion, because Jason Strife did that at Magnum. So,
Alrighty. So, let's focus on WCW and the rise of Eric Bischoff. Because, even though Turner owned the company, I mean, it was Eric that rose into power
yes.
As a promoter and president of the company. And what were some of his known aspects as a promoter?
Well, let's go ahead and start his background. He actually started out in the pro wrestling business as an announcer for Vern Gagne and the AWA in the late 80s after, I believe it was Ken Renzick, allegedly got arrested for a DUI. And he was brought in to do some like promotional work originally. Then he got brought up as an announcer. And then after AWA folded, he actually put an application to be an announcer in WCW when Jim Herd was running it. By the way, if you want to talk about people that were terrible promoters, Jim Herd's definitely at the top of the list, but because Bischoff had to go and undo a lot of the damage that Jim Herd did because he didn't know the wrestling business how it operated. He had people around him that were smart on the booking committee, but he would always go and overturn their stuff because there is such a thing as a bad promoter. Keep that in mind. But Bischoff... he came in as an announcer, and then over time he had different leaders in there in president of WCW, like Kip Fry after Jim Herd left. Then Cowboy Bill Watts came in and ran WCW for a while, and WCW didn't like the way that those guys were running things, especially Bill Watts, because he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because Bill Watts came in with the attitude that he's going to run roughshod over the company, and with the corporate structure of Turner, wasn't going to get over. So, because Bill was one of those old school promoters, he's like getting people's face, pointing their fingers, maybe even lay hands on them if he wasn't pleased with what they were doing. And then they wanted somebody that was a little bit more corporate fitting, corporate, kind of fit that corporate mold. And Bischoff was that guy. And he put his hat in the ring after Bill Watts left WCW to become executive producer, and then he ended up getting a job and started kind of changing how WCW was being presented, kind of a little bit more like Vince, upscale, bright lights, making sure there were TV studios like that were full. You could see the people in there, making the rings look nicer, making the entryway look a little nicer. Better camera angles, pyro, that stuff. And then after he did that, he also went and got Hulk Hogan to sign with WCW. He got a bunch of the guys from WWE that were, Vince was letting go after the steroid trial. Then he went and actually became executive vice president for WCW, I think for like 2-3 years, and started taking on more responsibility on like the office work and promoting towns and all that, promoting TV, pay-per-views. And then he became president of WCW during the height of the Monday Night War in 1997.
Sweet.
But the thing with Bischoff, there were good and bad things with him, in my opinion. Good things, he tried to make himself different from WWE. He tried to take from their audience because they were kind of on a down slump a little bit as popularity, and he was trying to do the opposite of what they were doing. But by taking some of their older talent, he was trying to get some of the attention that was still the average wrestling fan on their products. Like, hey, we have the guys here that were over before, and WWE was working on getting guys over at the time. And also, he was very smart as far as like getting sponsorships and knowing how to get the right people to assist him with like the book and stuff like that. But he had visions of where he wanted to go, because number one thing you gotta have as a promoter is a vision and be able to follow through with that. Some of the bad things with Bischoff is that he was still a little bit inexperienced to the wrestling industry. I think a lot of times, personally, he might let his, personal feelings somewhat get in the way of some things, and he would oftentimes be influenced too much by some of the other wrestlers that came before him that didn't really have the best intentions for the company, but rather for themselves. So I think, maybe he might have possibly, learned that over time, possibly not. I don't know who's to say, it's subjective. But WCW, that's why they say it had a rise and a fall, much like pretty much every other promotion in the world too. But in all seriousness, the number one promotion that has been able to rival as far as drawing money from Vince McMahon here in the United States, secondly, was Giant Baba and All Japan Pro Wrestling. Second popularity worldwide, second drawing ability worldwide, because they drew big time. And you can thank Giant Baba for that one, because he was a very smart businessman. He knew how to book, knew how to run his territory the way it would be accepted over there in their culture, yet at the same time knew how to trend set over there to be able to go and let new people that they had never seen that were not native to their country come in and get over and be stars and work with their native guys. And he also kept himself out of the limelight as much as he could when he knew that he had to step away. And then when he did return, he always came back in situations where he could protect himself, but get other guys over that he was booking. So, like, he was really, really good at that. And then, unfortunately, he passed away, and his wife assumed control of the company, and that's when everything went down. But if you want to talk about some of my favorite wrestling in the entire world, All Japan. That was really good stuff.
Well, how about this? Do you want to turn this into a two-part series?
We absolutely could.
Yeah, because it's like we're out of time to talk about Japan and some of the outside promotions and whatnot, so let's make that the topic of next week. How's that
Absolutely.
sound?
Well, I was also going to say what might be an even better suggestion as far as making that two-part series. Do half of it maybe on a little bit of Japan, the wrestling war over there, kind of go in depth on that, but also go in depth a little bit more on the indies as well.
Absolutely.
Because that was kind of have to go indies, then go back and start, with the territories, then go to the indies, because that's kind of what it is today is that every promotion has its own town, except it's not regional wise, it's kind of city wise, and sometimes you compete with that.
Alrighty, it's time to go home.
Doggone, all I have on me is a dime. I'm gonna have to draw later.
Drop the dime.
Uh-oh.
Okay. And it's tails! I win.
'Cause I don't